that this meeting goes smoothly. First, please make all efforts to cut down on background noise or mute yourself, including cell phones and pagers. Second, please allow everyone ample time to finish speaking. And third, please announce your name prior to speaking to assist with following the flow of conversation. With that, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Has everyone read the minutes of the March 2nd, 2020 meeting?
Yes.
Does anyone have any corrections? With that, do I have a motion to approve?
Chuck, it's Mark. I'll make a motion to approve the March 2nd, 2020 meeting minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
From Terry Luckett. Please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia?
Yes, the motion.
I think you said me. Yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Natale?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes to the motion. The Cicero Town Board acknowledges the importance of full public participation in all public meetings. Obviously, we're in a virtual meeting tonight, so if everyone can please make sure that they speak clearly into their microphones. At this time, I will make a motion that all actions taken tonight are type 2 actions and have a negative impact that is no impact on the environment unless otherwise indicated. Do I have a second?
Palladino, second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Rabia?
Yes, the motion.
Ms. Luckett?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Palladino?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Natale?
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Stanton?
Yes to the motion. Because we have an unusual situation here, I'll briefly review the process for tonight's meeting for the benefit of those present that have never been before Zoning Board of Appeals in a virtual manner. First, the applicant will have an opportunity to describe their project. Second, the board will ask questions about the project. Third, I will then open a public hearing where any comments collected as prescribed in the meeting notice will be read. Fourth, board members will then follow up on any questions posed in the public hearing, and the applicant will be given the opportunity to respond to the public input and provide additional information. Fifth, board members will again have the opportunity to question the applicant. And sixth, the board will openly discuss amongst ourselves the 5 factors that contribute to the final decision. Please note this board does not have a pre-agenda meeting, so there is no prior discussion of cases outside of this meeting. And lastly, a motion will be made either approving or denying the requested variance, seconded and voted upon. Our first and only case tonight is Tim Coyer, representing Serenity Living in the Hamlet. Please come up and address the board.
Good evening, Tim Coyer, INUZ Enrollments Land Surveying. I'm the surveyor and planner for the proposed project located at 9586 and 9610 Brewerton Road in the town of Cicero, and that's in the hamlet of Brewerton as discussed. Basically, what's going on here is there's an existing property. There's 3 existing tax parcels right now. On the northernmost tax parcels, there's an older house and well, actually 2 older houses that have apartments that are being rented in them. And the center parcel, 16, there's an existing commercial building that's actually being repaired or fallen into disrepair. I don't believe there's an existing commercial use in there right now. But basically, the applicant right now is looking to do what we'd call a mixed-use project on all three tax parcels. Specifically looking to do an 8-unit higher-end apartment building on the north side of the parcel as it just if they get combined. He's going to renovate and reuse the existing commercial building as it sits where it is today. They're going to be getting rid of both the residential buildings on the north side of the property to make way for a new the new 8-unit apartment complex and the parking that's needed. We're also going to redo the parking on the south side of the existing commercial building for the new uses that are going to be in there. There's also going to be some rental apartments in the commercial building on the second floor. They're going to be adding on to that existing building to do a second floor of apartments as well. All of this is going to be like the same architectural design, all of them trying to be like a community of sorts. That's the overall goal for this whole project. What we're here today to discuss is what we're trying to do is, like I said, there's 3 existing tax parcels, one in the north, one in the middle, and one in the south. And we're hoping to combine all these tax parcels into one tax parcel. If you actually look at some of the online images and some of actually the way the physical site is today, it basically operates and it looks like it's one big tax parcel as it is today. It's in sense, like I said, 3 tax parcels. We're hoping to combine them all into one. And one of the reasons we're here is specifically the front yard or the lot width, because we're in the hamlet. The maximum lot width in the hamlet is allowed is 150 feet. What we're asking for is 422 feet, which is the combined vertical or horizontal length of all 3 tax parcels combined along Brewerton Road. To do this, we had to come in for the variance. If you would like, I can go through the 5 factors if that would please do.
Tim, before you get to that, I just wanted to make 2 notes, one for your benefit, one for the board's benefit.
Yep.
Just as a reminder, because we're in Brewerton, they have their own special set of the code, and the planning board is allowed to address anything like front yards, side yards, rear yards. So the only thing that really requires our attention tonight is the overall lot width that's going to be created by joining these 3 parcels. And then Tim, I'm going to switch over to the Onondaga County Planning Board resolution. I'm assuming you and your client have a copy of this?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, very good. I'm not really going to belabor this too much, but it does say that therefore, it's resolved the Onondaga County Planning Board has determined that said referral will have no significant adverse or inter-community or county-wide implications. They did offer a series of comments. I'm sure you're aware of those. And because of the nature of these, all 5 of them are actually within the purview of the planning board. So I'm not going to address them tonight.
Nope. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to go ahead with the 5 factors, that'd be great.
All right. Is the requested variance substantial? Yes, it's substantial as far as mathematics. It's almost 3 times. We're asking for a 3 times increase in the allowable lot width. Will an undesirable change be produced in the character of the neighborhood, or will the granting of the area variance create a detriment to the nearby properties? We don't believe so. We're actually trying to improve the properties as they are today. They're kind of an eyesore, so I think this new project will actually improve the hamlet in general. Can the benefits sought by the applicant be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance? Yes and no. I say yes and no because when you have 150 feet, if you come down from the north line 150 feet, it puts the property line almost through that southerly portion of parking spaces. So you basically have parking spaces on the line. And then you come up 150 feet from the south boundary, you'd be putting it right through the existing parking lot as it sits today. So basically, because of where the existing commercial building is, it almost makes it very difficult to make it meet code as far as those 150-foot lot restrictions. The other thing that it also does, and we're trying to avoid, we could take the parking and put it in the back and try to get that property line in there. What that does, though, is it pushes us to the east and towards those residential properties. We're trying to stay away from the residents on the east side of the property as much as we can. We're trying not to avoid, impact the drainage, and B, the existing tree buffer that's back there right now. And the property owner actually wants to keep as much green area there because he wants to put some like fire pits and areas and stuff in back as well. So we're trying not to put the parking in the back, just for those specific reasons. So if we did put those property lines in there to avoid having any overlap with the parking, we would have to put the parking all the way back. The other thing that combining all the parcels does for us is it avoids having to have like a reciprocal easement or cross-access easements through all the parcels, because this is going to be one owner. And if you divide it up into separate parcels, we're going to have to get into a whole bunch of different easements to allow the parking restriction, the parking easements and access easements that it would be needed. Continuing. Was the alleged difficulty self-created? Yes, it's self-created because we're trying to create this site plan. Will the variance have an adverse effect on the nearby physical or environmental conditions? We don't believe so. Like I said, we're actually trying to improve the site, improve the drainage, and improve the site as a whole as it exists today.
Tim, thank you. And this is Chuck Stanton again. Could you maybe go into a little bit more detail about the one building that is going to partially remain?
Yes. So the existing commercial building, we're going to keep the whole thing as it is. It's actually right now got two residential apartments in the back. It's got the commercial parcels in the front. He's actually going to probably divide that front area up into three separate rentable spaces. Right now, he doesn't have a specific use as far as who's going to come in and rent them at the moment, but he's going to pick them all up and then provide what's the word I'm looking for? The architecture. They're gonna do all the architectural necessary to fix them up right now, and hopefully that will gain interest and gain them some people to rent them out. What they're also gonna do though is they're gonna build a second story on top of everything, and they're gonna put two more rental units above the commercial units, and they're gonna have access. They're all gonna ingress and egress through the back portion of the existing building as it sits today. So some of the residents are going to be using the parking spaces to the south of the building and to the north of the building as they occupy the commercial building.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else have questions?
I do.
I have a
I do.
question. Oh.
Okay. Go ahead, Terry.
The southernmost parcel, 9592, Tim, that one's not being developed. Why are you asking for that to be in the subdivision?
We're hoping actually eventually it will be developed, so we're trying to kind of knock it out right now. If everything goes really well with the northerly building, we're almost going to do an exact replica of that same building on the south side in the future, hopefully in the next year or two. To basically, he's hoping to gain the monies for the northerly building and get that all working, and the commercial building, then hopefully do an identical building on the south side. In basically mirror image, almost, if you will, on the south side of the building.
Couldn't we just do two parcels today, and when they get the financing or plans for the third building, then add the third piece? It seems a little premature to be adding that now.
We could. Let me just check something here.
I think leaving it as it is would leave the opportunity open for either this developer or some other developer to put a building there, which is what is wanted by the town. They want density on the streetscape.
Right. May I ask one question of that? Can I ask one question? Oh,
Sure.
Sorry, Tim, I was muted. Go ahead.
that would be fine with us. I just want to double check, like, if in the future we do want to put that southerly building in, I assume we would have to come in for a new variance to allow the 422 that we're asking for today. So basically what you're saying is today get a variance of, which would be, bear with me 1 second. It's nice I got AutoCAD though. Today would be a variance of asking for what basically 354 feet along the front. And then if and when we go to move forward with the southerly building, we would then have to come back for the 422, correct?
I mean, I would feel better about that. I still would like to see them broken up into 3 parcels. Apparently that doesn't work for you.
This is Gary. Terry, I hate to disagree. I don't see the point. We want to work. We want to be open-minded and work with the builder. I met with him along with Chuck, and he has other properties that he owns in the hamlet. So he's pretty serious about going forward. So why should we bring him back with the extra expense and time and our time? And let's put the job out there.
Why not put the building footprint on there then, if that's the plan?
I don't think it's necessary. Why are we putting an obstacle in the way of progress?
Hey, it's Mark. I've got a question for Tim. You mentioned, and I want to make sure I understand the building you were talking about. Are they going to try to reuse the old Cerrone satellite TV building? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay. And they're going to build on top of it?
Yep. He's working with Dean Johnson. Dean Johnson, specifically the architect, has gone through the building.
Okay.
They have a whole set of architecturals where they're basically redoing the entire building as far as the facade, all the outside, and yes, building on top of it. According to Dean and according to what his study is of the existing building, they're going to be able to structurally build on top of it, and it's apparently structurally sound and able to be used. They did the same thing. They looked at the other buildings up to the north of 2 houses. They just didn't seem to think that those ones were structurally sound enough or worth trying to renovate. So they're trying to keep the existing Cerrone building, yes.
Thanks. And I guess one follow-up, maybe 2 follow-ups. I guess based on the name of the project, I had gotten in my mind that it's a senior living complex. Is that true or not necessarily?
Well, he's trying to what's the word I'm gonna focus on retired professionals as far as that's the group of the group of people that he's trying to bring into this area. So retired professionals or actually possibly young professionals at the same time. But he was actually thinking about older retired professionals coming in, and that's what he specifically told me.
Okay. And then I guess one follow-up one and I'm done. Do they own the land right now, or is this speculative?
Nope, he owns the land now.
Okay. Thanks.
This is Gary Palladino. I got one question and I can't find it, so I'm going to ask everybody. I thought when I was going through the code book that I read somewhere about the accessory building, that it could only have residential or apartments on the top floor. Did I misread something and that it couldn't be apartments top and bottom? Did anybody come across that?
Steve, can you help us?
Yes, sure. So I think, Gary, you might have been looking at the table 21085-1 for the use regulations. It does describe an additional accessory family unit as being permitted on the upper floor. I would, I guess, ask Mr. Coyer why he's labeling the apartments to the north as an accessory building, because to me, it looks like an additional principal use, okay? Because multiple principal uses are allowed on one parcel. And that's how I see that. And the use is allowed, apartments are allowed in the district. So I wouldn't refer to that as an accessory use.
Once again, this is Gary Palladino. In the HG zone, you can have 2 principal uses on, I thought you could have 1 principal and 1 not.
No, you're allowed to have some accessory uses as well. But if you look in the Hamlet use regulations, you'll see under 21085, I believe it's 2 under section A that says number of uses. A parcel of land may contain more than 1 use.
Okay.
So to kind of answer that question, Steve, is I believe it was part of Mark Parrish's comments as to wanting us to put that note specifically on that northerly building. I'm trying to go through them real quick. I thought that's what he wanted us to do as far as a label on that northerly building. I think it was to satisfy the code.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
Steve, this is Chuck. You don't see this being anything that's a make or break for a decision for us to make, do you?
No, no.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else have questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess not any questions, more of a comment, I guess, for discussion. The only thing that's kind of going through my head is, I think someone said it earlier, is, they're trying to get a little bit more density along Route 11, as they start to redevelop it. I know they've been talking about that for at least 10 years now with the Brewerton revitalization. The fact that we're spreading development out, is this how we envision the gateway, at least the gateway into Brewerton to look, or do we want things to be closer? And it's not necessarily our decision, but I mean, I think we're laying the groundwork here for more kind of decisions like this if we let this happen, I think.
Yeah, that's what concerns me. I'm surprised that nobody from the village is here. I think it's a pretty important piece of the plan.
Well, Mark, Gary Natale here. Mark, you bring up a good point. However, that's really a planning board decision.
I'm absolutely. I'm 100% aware of that, and I hesitate even bringing up the question. But I'm just thinking out loud. If this is really kind of one of the first things we've seen, kind of fall under this new Hamlet code, and we're already trying to ask for things that are 3 times what the code lays out.
Mark, it's Gary Palladino. I had the same thought that you just voiced. But then I look back, and it was in October of 2008 that we put this in motion. And I mean, that's 12, 13 years almost, and we haven't done anything. So there's been no development. So maybe it's not a bad idea to start looking at this a different way, so we can at least get some development in there. And
for sure.
Better.
It was with great reservation. I even brought up the comment, to be honest with you. I mean, I think that parcel in particular needs some help. Anything they do to it, I think, is going to be helpful. So yeah, it was just something that was rolling through my head as I started looking at the plans and the project, saying, gosh, I mean, if this is, I don't know if this is what we want, but to your point, Gary, we've been talking about it for 13 years and we haven't done anything.
This is Terry again. Honestly, what I would like to see, if they're planning a second building, what I would love to see here is that parking in the back, and I know you talked about that, and then put the second building between so that you get that density. And leave the other parcel off and let somebody else develop that. Keep the parking in the rear. And I think that by making a giant lot, we're going to allow them, for instance, to just create a giant parking lot there instead of a building on that southerly parcel.
These are all good points, well taken. Excuse me. I would, the guidance we should be taking here is, as we do with every case, is to be looking at the surrounding properties too and seeing what those look like. And the chances of those turning over in the future. But Steve, correct me if I'm wrong. If they're showing specific parking here, and if the site plan gets approved to show that specific parking, they can't come back and put more parking in without going back in front of the planning board, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, they will have to go back before the planning board to put up the new an additional building. So not just the parking alone, but to get the approval for another apartment building.
Thank you.
Can I say something? Can I say something real quick?
Sure.
Absolutely, please, Tim.
So to Terry's point, one thing I want to point out is we have to, and we are going to actually make that southerly parking area smaller. Per the last planning board, meeting, we are actually going to redo that parking lot on the south side of the building, and it's actually going to get thinner and smaller. We were trying to avoid doing anything with that at this time, but because of the code and because of the planning board comments, we have to. It's going to shrink in size altogether in general. So we're definitely not going to increase any parking especially to the south. We're actually we're going to take out a whole bunch of pavement and make it smaller per code and per the comments from the planning board.
So you're gonna have less frontage as parking, you're gonna make it longer and narrower, more narrow?
So basically, like right now, there's like this huge girth or width of pavement that fronts on Brewerton Road, and it's
Right.
all going to get cut down to literally two 22-foot wide driveways. One that you see there today on the north side of the building, and one's going to be on the south side of the existing commercial building. So literally, all that pavement's going to get cut down to those two driveways that we're going to use for the parking for the access. So if we do if we do any additional building to the south, it's literally going to look like the parking on the north. It's going to come right in off that newer proposed driveway on the south side of the building, and then the parking is going to have to go in behind the existing commercial building once we go to get to that point. We are not going to expand parking to the south, and actually we can't put parking to the south anyway. We can't expand to the south because that new building has to be 15 feet or closer to the road boundary. So that new building has to get wedged up in there, basically on that southern property line. So we can't expand to the south with parking. We have to keep the building up there close to the road boundary.
Mhm.
This is Chuck Stanton. Tim, thank you for that clarification. Does anyone have any further questions?
Chuck, I think you were muted.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so if does anyone have any other comments? Okay, with that, I'll open the public hearing. Steve, did we receive any comments?
We have not received any. No.
Okay. So Anne Marie, for the record, there have been no comments submitted. So no one to speak for or against this. So at this time, I am closing the public hearing. And does the board have any further questions?
Nope.
Okay, I'll take that as a no. Apparently we're missing one of our members right now. Is there anyone who'd like to review, or Tim, is there anything else you would like to add?
Unfortunately, because my applicant's not here, he did get a number of the surrounding businesses to basically acknowledge and saying that they want this project to go in. They're really happy that it's going in. He knows and he's friends with quite a few of the businesses that are across the street and just north of the property. He has some letters and emails from them. He was going to read them tonight, but obviously he hasn't been able to make it. But there is a good amount of support for this project because, like you said, I personally live very close to this project, and I think that area needs something like this for people to walk around in the hamlet of Brewerton. I just think it'll be great. But I think it'll help a lot of the businesses in there, just to be honest.
Thank you, Tim. With that, if the board has no further questions, would someone like to review the 5 factors? Okay. Chuck Stanton, I will take care of that. So as far as the 5 factors that we have to review, the first would be whether undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties would be created. And before we get into this, we usually go down the line and say yes or no, whether we agree with this. If everyone could just state their name prior to saying it to give Anne Marie a little bit easier time with recording what's going on here. So first being whether an undesirable change would be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties would be created. My opinion is no. And my reasoning is Brewerton Road in this area is characterized by a mix of residential and commercial uses. The proposed project will create 2 new buildings whose facades more generally meet the requirements of the town code.
Yeah,
Gary
Chuck,
Natale, agree?
Chuck, it's Mark. I agree. I think it's going to improve the character of the neighborhood.
Thank you. Gary Palladino
I agree.
and Terry Luckett.
Agree.
Very good. Thank you. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than the area variance. My opinion is that the answer to this question is no. And the reason being, while the 2 proposed structures could possibly be built within the boundaries of the existing properties, it would create a situation where the buildings are not connected and could be sold separately, rendering the intent of the proposed construction invalid. Gary Natale, do you agree?
Agree.
Mark
Agree.
Robbie,
Agree.
Gary Palladino,
I agree.
and Terry Luckett.
I agreed.
Thank you. The third is that whether the requested area variance is substantial. In my opinion, the answer to this question is yes. The proposed lot width of 422 feet requires a variance of 272 feet over the maximum allowed lot width of 150 feet and is 281% larger than allowed in the town code. Gary Natale,
Agree.
Mark Rabia,
Absolutely agree. Yep.
Gary Palladino,
I agree.
and Terry Luckett.
I agree.
Thank you, guys. The fourth is whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. My opinion is that the answer to this is no. Reason being is that the proposed project requires site plan approval, and these issues will be addressed by the Town of Cicero Planning Board. Mr. Natale,
Agree.
Mr. Rabia,
Agree. No impact.
Mr. Palladino,
I agree.
and Ms. Luckett.
I agree.
Thank you. Then the fifth and last question is whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. In my opinion, the answer to this is yes. Reason being, the applicant is proposing to combine 3 existing lots into one that is larger in width than allowed by the town code. It should be noted, however, that this is not necessarily a reason to deny the variance. Mr. Natale,
Agree.
Mr. Ravia,
Agree. And I think all the other bulk regulations are being met based on the plans that Tim has shown us as well. So I agree.
Mr. Palladino,
I agree.
and Ms. Luckett.
I agree.
Thank you. So with that, I would like to make a motion on behalf of the applicant, Raymond A. Brooks, for the owner, Serenity Living in the Hamlet LLC, to combine existing parcels, increasing currently non-conforming lot width. The proposed lot width is 422 feet, where the maximum lot width allowed is 150 feet. This approval is conditioned on the proposed project site plan approval by the Town of Cicero Planning Board. All other bulk regulations will be reviewed and approved by the Town of Cicero Planning Board, and that's in the form of a motion. Do I have a second?
Gary Natale, second the motion.
Anne Marie, please call the roll. You fell victim to the same thing that I did. I didn't unmute myself. You didn't unmute yourself.
Unmute. There we go.
There we go.
All right. Mr. Rabia,
Yes, the motion.
Ms. Luckett,
Yes, to the motion.
Mr. Palladino,
Yes to the motion.
Mr. Natale,
Yes to the motion.
and Mr. Stanton.
Yes to the motion. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Congratulations, Mr. Coyer. You can take that back to your client.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And everyone stay safe out there.
Thank you. You too.
Mr. Chairman, Gary
Yes.
Natale here.
Yes, Mr. Natale.
For the record, could you indicate any other people that are involved in this video conference? Councilman, supervisor, anybody else that we may not know about? Have they come forward?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Natale. There is no one else in attendance besides us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So if there's no other business before the board, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All right, by Ms. Luckett. Do I have a second?
I'll second it, Gary Palladino.
Okay, by Mr. Palladino. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.